I'll put it that way. All right, so the county commissioner, results, straw poll results. District 2, and that's between John Hinkleman and Michelle Tooker. And Michelle Tooker won the straw poll at 72.2%. District 6, which is Julie Werfel and Bert Krebs. Barrett, my bad. District 6, Barrett won at 68.6% of the vote. And then, let's see here, District 10, between Mac Elliott and Eugene Casto, wasn't even close. It was Mac Elliott at 91.2%. And then District 12, between Michael Majerick and Sharon Tyler, who neither one of them was here, but we still do the straw poll for them because they were on our website. And that was, looks like Sharon Tyler at 52.2%. So, other than that, I'm going to turn over to Ashley. She's going to introduce our sheriff forum. Thank you, everyone.
All right, now I know everybody is really excited and looking forward to the Sheriff Forum. I know that I have had lots of feedback about how fun this event has been, how informative it has been, and how everybody is really looking forward to this one. I just want to remind everybody, on our website at Election Central on BerrienCountyGOP.org, we do have all the surveys displayed. These candidates took a lot of time to fill out all of these surveys and thoroughly answer the questions, and we really appreciate that, as well as all the candidates that showed up today to speak in front of you. This is not an easy thing to do. Some of them are first timers at getting up in public speaking, but we really appreciate it, so thank you very much. So, I would like to introduce our Sheriff Forum candidates. We have Jason Long, J.R. Johnson, Rick Briand, and Chuck Height. The moderators for this are Senator Jonathan Lindsay of Michigan's 17th District and journalist Clifton French of Real News Michiana. Let's give them a warm welcome. And as a friendly reminder, please speak loudly and close to the microphone, or feel free to take it off.
Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Sheriff's Forum. We're going to open this one up a little bit differently, and we're going to do something that I think will also highlight the seriousness of the job that all of these individuals undertake. And what I'm going to ask everyone to do is stand up with me in a minute, and we're going to offer a moment of silence. If anyone hasn't followed the news, we have both a deputy, Bradley Reckling from Oakland County Sheriff, who was recently laid to rest, and then right as that was happening in one of the counties I serve, Deputy William Butler, was killed serving in his duty as a sheriff's deputy. So I'd like everyone to rise with me, and we'll have a brief moment of silence for these men who served their lives. Thank you. The first question for this debate is going to be, if you've been here, it's not going to shock you, it's going to be an introductory question. We're going to ask each individual to come up and spend about 2 minutes explaining who you are, why you're running for sheriff, and anything else on the front end that you think the audience needs to know. We will first invite up Mr. Briand.
What's up, everybody? Thank you. I'm Rick Briand. I'm running for sheriff. Been married for 36 years. My wife's sitting there. A couple of my kids are sitting up here. I have 10 kids. One of our children passed away. I I was self-employed for 36 years. I'm a small business owner. When I was in my 40s, I went back to college and I earned an associate's degree in arts, and I earned a bachelor's degree in community service with a focus on family systems. I wanted to be a lawyer, but when I found out that I was going to have to give my first oath to the court over my clients, I changed my mind on whether I was going to be a lawyer or not. I got into this, originally I was running for, let's start at the beginning. I was in college and I was complaining about politics, and a friend of mine said, Rick, have you ever run for office before? I said, no. He said, well, if you haven't run for office, then shut up, because if you're not willing to do something about it, then you shouldn't be complaining about it. I'm like, okay, well then that makes sense. So I decided to run for county commissioner in 2014. In 2016, I ran for sheriff as a third-party candidate because the GOP didn't fit my agenda at that time, and I didn't fit theirs. I was asked to come back and run as a GOP in 2024. I was told that they were ready for me now. So that's what I'm doing. I'm running as a Republican, and I'm a libertarian conservative. I believe in people's rights. I believe in liberty. I believe in freedom. I think that it's the sheriff's job to protect all of those things. As much as he protects his employees, he's supposed to protect the people from bad employees, from bad government, from bad mandates, things like the mask mandate, shots. The sheriff's supposed to protect you from unlawful laws. So that's my plan, is to get in the office and protect the people from unlawful laws, from criminals, from whatever is threatening them. So thank you.
Mr. Long, we'll have you go next. Same question. Introduce yourself, and mic is yours.
How's everyone doing? My name is Jason Long. I've been a cop for a little over 24 years, started in March of 2000, a long time ago. I did my first 2.5 years inside the jail. I then went on to the academy. I worked patrol up until the deadly shooting that happened at the courthouse in 2016, actually coming up to another anniversary to that. I transferred to courthouse security after the incident. I've been there since. I'm running for Sheriff Berrien County because I've had several people over the past few years ask me to get involved, ask me to run for the position. I've gotten heavily involved in politics because of COVID. I believe in freedom. I don't believe in compromising my freedom for a false sense of security. Our federal government and state government has too much control. And that's our mistake. We've allowed that to happen. Our framers, when they put the Constitution together, that was not the intention for our government to have as much authority and power over us as they do now. People should not be in office as long as a lot of politicians are now. The framers believe that you put in a term or two, you go back to your farm. That's how it should be. I think, unfortunately, some people want to make it their career. I believe differently. I'm a constitutional conservative. I believe in freedom. Like I said, I don't believe in compromising it for false insecurity. Fiscal balance, as well as other things. I've been a member of the CSPA, Constitutional Sheriff's Peace Officers Association, for the past few years now. I'm endorsed by Richard Grinnell, who is President Trump's former acting Director of National Intelligence, and I've been recently endorsed by Right to Life of Michigan. Vote for Jason Long.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Mr. Johnson, your opportunity to introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name is Roger Johnson, more commonly known as JR. You see signs out there. JR's kind of highlighted on those. I've been a police officer for 23 years. I was born actually in Berrien Center, raised in Berrien Springs. I currently live in St. Joe with my family. My wife and 3 kids. They all live in St. Joe at this time. Doing this job throughout the years. I've been at the department now for 21 years. I originally started in Chickabing Township. You begin to see flaws, you begin to see issues in the communities that need to be dealt with. And like Mr. Berrien said, if you're going to complain about them and you're not going to run, you're not really serving too much of a purpose. I decided to run. I feel like I put my ceiling at this department. This is my community, and I feel the sheriff is the doorman to that community. So, asking for everyone's support.
Thank you. Finally, Mr. Height, your opportunity to introduce yourself to the crowd.
Thank you. First, I want to thank the GOP for putting this on. I am Sheriff Chuck Height. I was appointed as sheriff January 1st this year after retirement of Sheriff Paul Bailey. There was a process that was in place. We did interviews, and the county clerk, the county prosecutor, and the chief probate judge decided that I was the most qualified to serve as sheriff. So a little bit about me. My amazing wife, Michelle, is here. So I am a husband, father, and more importantly, a very proud grandfather of 4. So the safety of the public is foremost for me. A little bit about my law enforcement experience. I've got over 30 years of experience in law enforcement. My first full-time job was with the city of Buchanan. For 10 months, I got hired at the sheriff's office. I worked in the jail and then got transferred to the road. About 6 years later, in 1999, I was hired as the chief of police for the city of New Buffalo, where I served for 3 years. Returned to the sheriff's office and was appointed undersheriff in 2003, where I served 21 years as under Sheriff Bailey. During that time, the experience I gathered administrative-wise when it comes to the budget, presenting that to the county commissioners. The sheriff's office has a $29 million budget, so there's a lot that goes into that, whether the jail's about $13 million, the road patrol's $7 million, and then we have a lot of contracts, whether it's our school resource officers, our contracts with other townships. So there's a lot of administrative duties that are required of the sheriff. I'm the only one that has the experience doing those duties. And I look forward to serving as your next sheriff with a vote of August 6th for sheriff. Thank you.
Mr. Hyde, you can actually keep you up there, and we're going to move back down the other way.
I should know that from the last one.
In 2020, we saw numerous businesses closed, constitutional rights violated, and children subjected to what many would consider abuse with government-mandated COVID-19 restrictions, measures, and lockdowns. Do you think the county, state, and municipal governments violated the Constitution? And what would you do as a sheriff if any government agency attempts to do the same thing or something similar in the future?
So what I'll say is we did learn a lot through COVID. Sometimes it takes a while, but the Michigan Supreme Court ruled the governor did not have the authority to do what she did with the mandate. So beyond 28 days, it now would take the legislature to concur with anything she does. And that points out today, but I'm glad to see so many people here, elections matter. They matter because right now there's a Democrat House and Senate that could easily give that to them. So the issue of some business code with the one from the roller rink is that was a civil matter that was signed by a judge. So as a sheriff, I don't have the opportunity to tell a judge I'm not going to abide by a court order. The Michigan Constitution outlines the sheriff's responsibility when it comes to court orders and upholding the laws from the legislature. There's a lot of discretion in that. What I can tell you is I also during that time served in a legislative body where I served in the school board. I was president of the Buffalo School Board, and I fought for the parents' rights to choose whether they wear a mask or not. And we did not have a mask mandate when I served on that school board. I also stood behind parents who were complaining about critical race theory and addressed that with the superintendent and stood by them when there was even an accusation of a teacher for there. So I am one that stands for the rights of people, but I will tell you, as a sheriff, I will do my job. And the job is outlined in the Michigan Constitution that you will uphold the laws by the legislature. That's why it's very important. We're going to hear from our legislators next that make the laws. We have Senator Lindsay here, and I applaud a lot of his decisions in those. But as a sheriff, the Michigan Constitution is clear about the roles and responsibility of the sheriff.
Thank you. JR, you're next. Same question. In 2020, we saw numerous businesses closed, constitutional rights violated, and our children subjected to what many would consider abuse with government-mandated COVID-19 restrictions, measures, and lockdowns. Do you think the county, state, and municipal governments violated the Constitution? And what would you do as the sheriff if any government agency attempts to do something similar in the future?
Well, obviously I have a different perspective than where Sheriff Height was during that time. I was a patrol officer, so I had to make decisions in that capacity. I can say I never wrote one ticket for many of the COVID complaints. I didn't agree with it, right or wrong, and over there to do a job, but I did not agree with it. I received complaints, investigative memos to go follow up on. I saw my father, I saw him struggle. My wife has a business in Cass County. Her struggle was different. Her struggle was the customer having concerns, not the government, which is the customer's right. I do understand that we do vote people and elect people in to make these laws, and the sheriff is elected to enforce them. The sheriff has to go to bat for the people and develop good relationships with the people that make those laws and share their concerns on behalf of the people they represent. As far as the vaccines and the mask mandates go, I dealt with it with my own family, health issues, the mask problems it generated, the vaccine, when they were talking about implementing them in schools and enforcing them, to me, in my mind, a needle near my kid that I didn't authorize is considered deadly force. I'm absolutely not for forcing anybody to make decisions, nor am I against people that chose to make any of those decisions. Business owners should have a right to make their own decisions, and the customer should be able to decide whether or not they want to go based on their own health issues, preferences. Just very big on people, the people that you govern, making their own decisions. Thank you.
Mr. Long, same question. If you want me to repeat it, I can. If not, you can just go ahead.
You would repeat it, please.
In 2020, we saw numerous businesses closed, constitutional rights violated, and our children subjected to what many consider abuse with government-mandated COVID-19 restrictions, measures, and lockdowns. Do you think the county, state, and municipal governments violated the Constitution? And what would you do as the sheriff if any government agency attempts to do the same or something similar in the future?
Constitutional rights were trampled on during COVID. Like I said earlier, we have given the government way too much control. I have had several friends that were affected, as I'm sure you all have as well, by lockdowns, mandates. And it's interesting, you look at the federal government money that was given, those loans that people, most, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of people abused, never paid back. That was a big scam for a lot of people. In fact, there was a young man that was murdered and killed a few years ago because someone heard about all the money, COVID money that he received. I believe that the sheriff's responsibility, because of the Michigan State Constitution, is to make sure the rights aren't trampled on for the people. The government had a big power grab. They were able to control us, keep us away from our family, friends, church, and that isn't right. That isn't right at all. I wasn't on patrol when the COVID mandates happened. But I can tell you what, I wouldn't have enforced them at all. I wouldn't have. That's not right. It would have been insubordination, but it is what it is. And something else that kind of tilts me and burns me a little bit is the federal government had wanted us to get the jab. Now, I've got no problem with someone that took the jab. I did. I don't trust the government. Like I said, we've given them too much control. But that should not have been forced upon us. And it almost was. Thank God the Supreme Court stepped in. But the sheriff has a responsibility to protect the people. That's what the sheriff should do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Berrien.
Our constitutional rights were trampled on in 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. They're still happening now. It's watered down some because people have gotten sick of it and pushed back. But those first 2 years, it was 2 weeks to stem the curve. My answer to that question is, if I was sheriff, I would have said, I'm not going to enforce those mask mandates. If you want me to, you're going to have to sue me. It was an executive order. Executive orders only apply to government. They don't apply to the rest of us. We're not in government. So that's what I would have done. I would have said, no, I'm not going to enforce that law. If you don't like it, then you can sue me. And that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to stick with COVID, but this next round of questions, we're going to stick with COVID. But I'm going to start with Mr. Height. This next round of questions, 60 seconds to respond. As our timekeeper has that. Make sure the timekeeper's got that. Timekeeper. Hey, 60 seconds on this next. Yeah. No, you're good. Thanks. So sticking with COVID, and these are going to be a bit tailored because people were in different positions, right? You were the undersheriff during the time. So, Mr. Height, what is your biggest regret on how your department handled COVID-19 mandates, restrictions, and lockdowns?
So what I would say we did that is, one, just a correction when it came to the vaccines. I applaud the county commissioners when the federal government did it. They did not agree with doing that. That was based on several of us going to the county commission and saying we were not in favor. So there was no mandate for that within the county employees, and I applaud that. You know, I will say right there, we've learned a lot from COVID. At the time when the governor, did that, the Supreme Court clearly said she outdid her authority, and that is now case law. So that is in place right now. So hindsight 2020, but the biggest thing again is elections matter, and making sure that we put people in office that will not give her the support to do that. Thank you.
JR? "60 seconds, essentially to respond. So what do you believe was our sheriff's department's biggest problem in response to COVID?"
Well, I think our sheriff's department's biggest problem was a problem with a lot of people. Nobody knew what hit them at first. I understand it's a deadly, virus. We're not sure what's going on. You sit back, you look at it, and then you reapproach. I think we really should have thought about things. I think the investigations that I was asked to do and partially did these small businesses, I think put a bad taste in some of these businesses' mouth. Those are the people that vote us in, those are the people that elect us, and those are the people that were sworn to uphold their rights and their right to run their business without interference from the government is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Long, same question. What do you think was done? What problems do you think our department had when it came to response to COVID?
Enforcing the mandates. Sheriff has more authority in this county than any county commissioner group. Actually, more than the prosecutor when it comes to protecting the citizens. In the academy, you were taught that the prosecutor is the chief law enforcement officer. If you look at the state constitution, it says differently. We should not have enforced the mandates at all, masks. The problems with school boards, sheriff's department should have stepped in. Sheriff has that authority. He's got that responsibility. That's what should have been done.
Mr. Berrien? Same question.
Want to repeat it?
Sure. What was the biggest issue with our sheriff's department's response to COVID?
That they enforced it. That was the biggest mistake. I mean, like I said before, it was an executive order. All they had to do was say, we're not going to do that. I mean, 2 weeks to stem the curve. Okay, I could agree with that. I'm like, all right, we don't know what's going on. 2 weeks, we'll give them 2 weeks, but 2 weeks or to 2 months or to 2 years. It was beyond ridiculous, and hopefully everyone remembers that, because there's all kinds of elected officials right now that are asking for your support again that were participating in that. And no matter what they say, I was just doing my job, didn't work in Nuremberg, and it shouldn't work here.
Thank you all. Our next segment is going to continue the theme of talking about constitutional rights and the role that the Sheriff's Office has, but I will take one moment to replug for everyone. Please check out the Berrien County GOP's website. The folks up here and all of the candidates we've heard from took an incredible amount of time and put detail into answering a bunch of questions on a survey. We will not be able to go through all of them today, but I encourage all of you to check those out. But related to that, the survey asked a series of questions related to certain constitutional rights, specifically the Second Amendment, firearm ownership, and the right to bear arms. Fortunately, the entire group all agreed on some basic things, that the Constitution does say we have a right to keep and bear arms, and the Michigan Constitution reaffirms that. There was a split on this forum between two individuals who said that they would not be comfortable enforcing one of the new red flag or extreme risk protection orders in Michigan, and 2 candidates who said that they would enforce those. So we're going to take an opportunity now to talk a little bit about that. We'll start with Mr. Berrien, who's one of the individuals he said he would not enforce. Can you explain more to the audience of why you would not do so if you got a legal order from a court asking you to enforce one of these orders?
So, I've been a victim of false police report. I had a neighbor who filed a protection order against me in secret. It was an emergency protection order, and it went through, and I had to go to court to drop that protection order. It was really easy for him to get that done. All he had to do was go in and cry to the judge. It took me 3.5 hours to get that thing dropped. 3 times the judge said, oh, I don't have any reason to hold this, and he came back and said, oh, please, please. 3.5 hours to lose a protection order that I didn't do anything other than my neighbor didn't like me. Okay, so in that case, having been a victim of that, I don't think that a court should be able to take away your gun rights when the U.S. Constitution says that we have a right to a gun, the Michigan Constitution says that we have a right to the gun, and the 9th Amendment says that we have all of the rights that can't even be listed. So in that case, nowhere in there does it say that one person can take away another person's rights because someone else said they did something. I mean, there should be evidence, there should be more than just a simple statement that you could go and take away someone's rights.
Thank you, Mr. Berrien. Mr. Long, similar question to you. The extreme risk protection order is a law on the books in Michigan. There are cases where as sheriff, you could have it come in front of you and you'd be asked to see someone's firearms. You answered that you would not be willing to do so in your survey. Would you please explain your position?
I've got a big problem with the government taking people's property. I agree with the red flag laws, believe it or not, some people lie with paperwork. And someone can easily say, you know what, Jason Long's nuts, he's crazy. About the paperwork gets sent in, and I'd be getting served papers to fight for my number 2 amendment protection. I think it's wrong. I do not believe it should be forced in any way upon anyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Mr. Johnson, the next question is for you. You answered that as sheriff, you would be willing to perform gun seizure under the red flag laws. And so this is a little bit more complicated of a question. Are there any exceptions to that where you would not be willing to perform a gun seizure? And if not, just generally explain your answer to the audience.
Well, this is a tough one that's been weighing on my mind for quite some time. From the time I heard it was coming out to now. Because you're two-faced on this law when you make a decision. And if I'm sheriff and my deputies go out to a house the night before, and this is a real life example, and somebody says they have worms in their brain and it's telling them to shoot up a school and they have guns, and my deputies don't take those guns because I want to make a stance and say I'm not enforcing this, I feel like I failed the public. It's our job to uphold the Constitution, and it's our job to protect the public. I'm on patrol on midnights now. I'm out there when most people are sleeping, and I see things that go on, and we're out there protecting people, and the majority of people don't know what's going on. They don't know they were protected. They don't know someone was arrested down the street from their house. It's the same way with this mental health crisis we have. And it's a bad law. It's written bad, but it goes back to electing the proper people. We don't formulate the laws, and I would actually, to follow up on the other part of your question, there would be some incidents where I would say, no, I'm not doing it. The problem with this law is an angry girlfriend, angry boyfriend, angry, whatever. Their statement goes on paper, and then they're sending the police to take away someone's constitutional rights, and it's absolutely asinine. It's horrible. We see it with domestic violence. There's false statements, but our hands are tied. You have to arrest people. So this law is very complicated for a sheriff that has the best interest of the people in mind. Because how do you uphold the Constitution, and how do you protect people at the same time? It's a difficult question, but I take the utmost pride in protecting my community, and as sheriff, I'm not going to let that waver. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Same question.
So very similar. One, I am a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I've been a longtime member of the National Rifle Association, proud member, and a member of the Golden Eagles leadership team of that organization. So the Second Amendment is very important to me to protect the rights of law-abiding citizens. But as Mr. Johnson said, to say no, it was a yes or no question, which I don't like yes or no questions to begin with. It's not a yes or no answer. If you said no, you just said you would not do what Mr. Johnson outlined and what I'll outline here. There are people with mental illness. We deal with that. You just had 2 deputies killed, and I guarantee you that's part of what the issue. We had an issue in Kelowna recently with someone with mental illness. So where I stand firmly between the Second Amendment, I will protect the community, as was said. I will tell you right now, in the state of Michigan, there's been 97 of the red flag laws issued. There were 2 that were dismissed right away. There's 95 that were active. 77 of those were done by law enforcement agencies. That's 78% of law enforcement agencies that saw an issue or a mental illness in doing that. So where I will stand for the law-abiding citizen, I agree with Mr. Johnson. There are people out there that have mental illness that pose a threat to our community, and I will do what I can to protect. Now I'm gonna tell you, before the law came in place, because I was sheriff in February, I wrote a letter to the 3 family court judges. I outlined my dismay with the law. I think it's an unfunded mandate. I think the storage of the guns being our responsibility is wrong. And I think the lack of due process for a third party to do that, as was mentioned by some of the candidates here, we see false complaints, whether it's child abuse or whatever else. But the problem is, with saying no to that answer, you also said no to protecting the public when someone has a mental illness and is threatened to do something with a firearm.
Thank you all. This is a follow-on question for that. We're going to ask, like we did the last round, to just have 1-minute answers, one more opportunity to talk a little bit about firearm rights. The question, we're actually going to start with Mr. Berrien and go the same way through this time. And the question for everyone is going to be about a United States Supreme Court case, Prince versus United States, happened in 1997. At that time, the Clinton administration was trying to use the federal government to force county sheriffs across the country to implement certain gun laws. And a group of sheriffs decided not to implement those, and they went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they ended up winning the case. And the question that comes out of this is, how important do you think it is, if you do rub up against one of these things where the law is not what it should be, that from the office of sheriff, is there an opportunity, and to what degree are you willing to step out in front and lead, even if it means going to court or fighting this to push back against what you see as an unconstitutional law?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at when I answered is, rather than me going and arrest somebody unconstitutionally, I would rather stand for their rights and have myself be arrested, because at least I have the protections of the office behind me, and a person that's out on the streets doesn't have anything but an attorney. And most of the time people can't even afford a good attorney. So in that instance, rather than, like Chuck said, go and enforce the law, I would say no. I don't think that's. I think my educated opinion is that that's any law that's contrary to the Constitution is not a law. So then, how can you go and enforce the law any other way than under color of law? So,
thank you, Mr. Long. Same question. How do you see opportunities to push back? Would you use the Prince case as maybe a blueprint?
I actually met one of the sheriffs that was involved in one of those cases, Sheriff Mack, this past February. Sheriff Mack, along with some other sheriffs, fought the federal government on the Brady bill and other unconstitutional bills, and they won. He made a joke about how the Clintons put out a protection restraining order against him. He was just joking about that. He's also the gentleman that formed the CSPA, Constitutional Sheriff's Police Officers Association, in the 2000s. I feel it's the sheriff's job to uphold the Constitution. That's why we have a Constitution. The government has way too much control. We do have to keep people safe, but I don't believe in taking people's property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Mr. Johnson, this is going to be the same. To what degree do you see the office playing a role in stepping out and leading in challenging unconstitutional laws, if you see them?
I think it's expected of the sheriff that the people put in power to represent them. I think it's expected of the sheriff to uphold the Constitution in the best interest of their people. I don't have a history of backing down, whether it's from bad guys, from courts, whatever it is. I've been involved in plenty, and I'm not scared to hold that line for the citizens of sheriff. It's their job to protect them, uphold the Constitution, and look out for their best interests. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Height, same question. To what degree do you think the office of the sheriff could lean out and take leadership in challenging unconstitutional actions?
Yeah, so as the sheriff, obviously we're to uphold the Constitution. In this specifically, I can tell you, being a member of the Michigan Sheriff's Association, although I disagreed with them and them because they finally supported this, but they did that based on they got a lot of changes into the law. So as bad as it is right now, it was going to be worse. But I really do feel that obviously voting matters. I'm going to applaud Senator Lindsay, Representative Paquette, and Representing Wenzel for voting no for the red flag law. Joey Andrews voted for it. We need to make sure that when we use our rights, not just as a sheriff, I'll do everything I can, but as individuals to vote. I will tell you, I was interested, so I FOIA'd the voting record of myself and my opponents. Since August of 2010, I voted 24 times. That's more than all three of my opponents combined. Mr. Brandt voted 13, Mr. Johnson 8, and Mr. Long 2 times. That matters. The fact that we say what we stand for, I believe the men and women of this country paid a great sacrifice. It is an option, but it's something that we choose to do, and I will continue to support and fight for you, the people.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Mr. Berrien. This question is going to be for all 4 of you, so I can repeat it when we move on from the first answer. Pornographic and sexual material in our schools has become a hot button issue. Children in our local schools are being given books about graphic sexual encounters, incest, rape fantasies, and more. Do you believe this is a punishable crime under Michigan statute? How would you proceed with dealing with an educator who provides this material to a child and a prosecutor who may refuse to move forward with charges?
Okay, that's pretty simple. If it's a crime, then the teacher should be prosecuted if it falls under the definition of a crime. If the prosecutor doesn't want to prosecute a crime, then the next level is to take it to the state prosecutor. I don't think that someone that commits a crime should be able to get away with it. Now, I did want to address, Mr. Height said that he FOIA'd our voting records. I thought that was funny because I FOIA'd all of these guys' police records, and I can't get anything from it. So at least he got a response on his FOIAs, but my FOIAs, they told me that I couldn't know that information. I think it's important if you're running on a police record that people ought to know what your record is. Right now, all these guys just get to sit up here and be, hey, we're cops, but nobody knows what they've done. So unless they want to tell us, we can't find out. Thanks.
Mr. Long. Pornographic and sexual material in our schools has become a hot button issue. Children in our local schools are being given books about graphic sexual encounters, incest, rape fantasies, and more. Do you believe this is a punishable crime under Michigan statute? How would you proceed with dealing with an educator who provides this material to a child and a prosecutor who refuses to move forward with charges?
It is definitely a crime, serious felony. It should be enforced. And actually, I have to agree with Mr. Bryant there. If the local prosecutor wouldn't charge the person, then I'd go to the state attorney general. If they didn't charge, I'd figure something out. It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. I know there was an instance of that in Coloma schools, Brandywine schools, and nothing was done with those teachers. It's crime. Children are being protected. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, same question.
Actually, when this was going on in Coloma, I was on patrol and I heard this, and then I heard things that were being discussed about it, and I actually took the time to look this law up and send it to their chief of police and say, this is the law. This is the law that needs to be submitted to the prosecutor's office. And I'd probably still have the conversation in my phone. The law is the law. The law needs to be enforced. It needs to be upheld, especially when it comes to safety and well-being of our kids. It's paramount. It's the most important. As far as my police record go, Rick is welcome to my personnel file at any time he wants. 23 years, suspended 2 days for damage in a locker when I was late to the riots in 2003. So if he wants my personnel file, he can have it. So, but to answer your question, yes, there is a clear law. I looked it up. I specifically looked it up to send it to the Coloma Police Chief because I didn't agree with not enforcing it.
We have, I believe you have 30 seconds left. So, what would you do with a prosecutor who refuses to move forward with charges?
Well, I would probably have a meeting with the prosecutor. I'm big on communication. You sit and talk, explain, find out what their reasoning is, because if you don't know their reasoning, there may be something I don't know about. You meet with them, you talk to them, you express your frustration with it, and then you move on from there. Maybe call the Attorney General, explain to them what the case is going. If something else has been going on throughout the state we're not familiar with, that they just dealt with, they may be more familiar with prosecuting it. So I would, I definitely wouldn't let it stop if that's the case.
Thank you. Mr. Hines, same question. Pornographic and sexual material in our schools has become a hot button issue. Children in our political schools are being given books about graphic sexual encounters, incest, rape fantasies, and more. Do you believe this is a punishable crime under Michigan statute? How would you proceed with dealing with an educator who provides this to a child and a prosecutor who refuses to move forward with charges?
Yes. So obviously, as law enforcement, our job is to investigate the crimes. If you're any Law and Order fans out there at the intro, the criminal justice system are represented by two separate and equally important groups. The police that investigate them, they call them district attorneys. In Michigan, we call them prosecutors. So we would do the investigation, we would send it forward. But I would differ with Mr. Long when he says we could still charge or do that. I can't charge anybody. We can make an arrest based on the elements of crime. When we do that, we put in a prosecution request, and we do what's called a CNA. We do an affidavit that we swear to of what happened and what it is. But the prosecutor makes that decision. Again, elections matter. So with that, your only other option would be to go to the Attorney General. But I can tell you in Michigan, that's not going to happen. Again, elections matter. But to say that the sheriff has more power than the prosecutor, I would love to see where that comes in the Michigan Constitution, because that's not outlined in the Michigan Constitution under the duty of the sheriff. The prosecutor and the sheriff's relationship, as Mr. Johnson said, is very important. I would have those discussions, but the bottom line is the prosecutor is given that authority when it comes to charging someone with a crime. I, as sheriff, can't do that. My deputies can do the investigation, they can submit it, but we can't make the prosecutor do those charges. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you to stay. Keep staying. So we're going to move on now to personalized questions. And this one kind of feeds off of what we were just talking about. Each candidate's going to get their own question here about just an issue that we believe they need to be questioned about. And with yours, once again, piggybacking off of this question regarding the pornographic material in schools. Real News Michiana, I uncovered a story in which a middle school teacher drew a graphic sexual picture on the whiteboard in front of a classroom of children. The superintendent himself stated that went against school policy and did not contain any educational benefit. I do know that police reports were made. Why wasn't that teacher charged with a crime?
So again, I think you and I had a conversation on this exact case. So that was in Brandywine, an investigation was done. It was submitted to the prosecutor. The prosecutor ruled that under the criminal statute with the way the school is, and that's his job, her job, to interpret that. So I had a discussion about that, I gave my opinion, but it is the prosecutor's role. So, as much as sheriff, I'd like to say I can do that. To say that I can tell the prosecutor what to do is not true. It's not part of the Michigan Constitution. The prosecutor is given that responsibility to authorize charges and bring charges forward. I will stay with exactly what the Michigan Constitution says for sheriff. I will fight for that. I think you and I had that conversation when I pushed it forward.
Quick follow-up. Do you believe that teacher should have been arrested?
I believe that it was very inappropriate. Obviously, having served the school board, I would have a big issue from the school stance too. But I can tell you, when you talk to the prosecutor, they're not going to authorize it. To arrest somebody when the prosecutor's already told you it's not going to be authorized, you're leaving yourself, your deputies, and staff to a false arrest claim when the prosecutor has ruled on it already.
Thank you.
Our next question will be directed at Mr. Long. Mr. Long, in the survey that everyone responded to, there was a question about experience and pointing specifically at experience managing large organizations or budgets. We heard earlier the sheriff's office has a budget of nearly $30 million. I believe someone told me that they have up to 200 people working in the sheriff's department in various capacities. You were the only individual out of the three who didn't point to any experience managing a large organization or a large budget. And you did say that you would surround yourself with the right administration to get the job done. But I wondered if you would share with the audience why you think that it's appropriate for them to elect someone if you say you don't have experience over those sorts of budgets or that many people.
I think that's up for the people to decide. Thank you.
All right, JR. So, Mr. Johnson, you were involved in 2018 in an action that ended in the death of a suspect. This action was deemed justified. That being said, what lessons did you learn from that incident, and are there any changes that you would make to policy?
Well, I stand by that. I've testified in this. I've been deposed on it. A guy was breaking into a house. I confronted him. I held the line, so they say. I confronted him. He happened to be on methamphetamine, fentanyl, and the only other option there would be to walk away and let the citizens deal with it, to save myself from litigation and possible prosecution, which I chose not to do. It's not my job. It's not what the badge is for. With that being said, it was a hard incident. There's two incidents actually that year that were rough. But like I said before, I don't back down in the name of the law. The law, the citizens need to be protected. The law needs to be enforced. Honestly, I identified it as possible excited delirium right from the bat. The lawsuit went through. I honestly can't think of a whole lot that I would change other than locking down that border so we have to stop. We can stop dealing with this fentanyl and people dying, officers getting prosecuted for them dying. I'm tired of it. You don't know what people are on nowadays. You know, when I grabbed the guy's arms, they were like tree trunks. That's the strength he had in him because of those drugs. So I can't think of anything I'd do different. I can't, nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Berrien, on your survey you indicated, and you're the only one who does not have law enforcement certification who's running for office. There's actually a push in Lansing right now that we're observing to change the law to require certain qualifications in the law enforcement field before running for office. So it's a two-part question. Number one, why do you believe that despite not having certain qualifications, you're still a qualified choice for the people to select? And also, do you think it's important for the legislature to stay away from this topic and not impose those requirements to run for this office?
Okay, first of all, why should people vote for me for sheriff? Well, I'm honest. I've ran a business before. I understand the law, I think, better than any of these three guys in here. And I don't have any hidden agenda. I don't have any hidden loyalties. I'm going into this job to clean up the sheriff's department, to make sure that it functions equally for everyone. Equally, across the board, no matter whether you're a criminal or whether you're not a criminal. Everyone deserves justice, and that's what the sheriff's department is there for, is to serve justice. John, the second part of that question?
The second part of the question.
I remember now. Yeah, they're trying to say that you have to be a police officer to be a sheriff. And I had to go to Lansing to actually testify to the election committee about that, because forcing a person to be a sheriff, police officer to be the sheriff, it turns the candidate pool down to a zero, because a lot of officers aren't going to ever run for this. The ones that are going to be upper management, like these guys, and a lot of times upper management's in alliance, for lack of a better term. I'm not part of that alliance. I know a lot of people like to tout the thin blue line, and that's fine when you're in the trenches with your friends, your comrades, whatever. It's important to watch each other's backs, but it's also important to watch the people's back, the public's back, and you can't look at everyone that you see as a criminal. And I remember back in 2014 when I was going to GOP meetings, Paul Bailey stood up, he said, I bag him, and he tags him, talking about Mike Sepik. And Mike Sepik said, everybody's a criminal, we're just looking to catch, they just haven't been caught yet. And I think that's a terrible philosophy to have in law enforcement. You're supposed to believe that people are innocent until proven guilty, and that's the attitude that I'm gonna bring into the office.
Thank you. This is a question I had that has kind of already been touched on regarding personnel files. My question was going to be, I'm going to request your personnel files and let you kind of tell me what would be in there. I've decided to change it now and just ask for the law enforcement officers who are up there right now. By a show of hands, who would be willing to commit to me to release their personnel file for publication? Thank you.
You guys can all clap at that too, as a question. All right, I hate to disappoint the audience in moving away from hot button political issues, but we are here talking to candidates for sheriff. Very simple question. We're going to start with Mr. Height and work our way this way. What is your plan to tackle and reduce crime?
Yes. First, I want to take a minute to address the question that was asked to Mr. Johnson. I also was deposed in an incident and basically testified that Roger Johnson did not do anything wrong. There's been a lot paid, and sometimes civil suits. Even though we're running against each other, I was deposed and stand behind the fact he did not do anything wrong. With that, we are continuing to look at different ways we can do things. Obviously, with technology, I can tell you a couple things we've instituted since I was in. The flock cameras are amazing. I know some have talked about privacy. It's not a privacy issue. If a stolen vehicle goes by, it picks up as a stolen plate. We have solved many things, from a kidnapped autistic child to different crimes, shootings that occurred. So that's one of the technologies that is I think almost better than when the taser was first initiated. The other thing is some cell break and some online lead services that our detectives can use to continue to do that. So I guess what I would say is I'm very proud of the men and women that work at the sheriff's office. Our sweat unit continues to work hard, getting fentanyl and meth off the streets. Like Raythwa said, I went and spent 45 minutes talking to President Trump about the border, because every county right now is a border county. And we have seen the increase in fentanyl and meth. Our narcotics detectives, we came together with the Michigan State Police to form the sweat unit. They're doing a great job. We've got a detective sergeant assigned to the FBI task force that's also doing a great job, was instrumental in recovering the guns that were stolen from Dunham's and other violent crimes that are taking place. So we'll continue to look at it. The one statement I don't like is that's the way we've always done it, so we'll continue to look at progressing in what we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, same question. What is your plan to tackle and reduce crime?
Well, first of all, from a patrol standpoint, we can't let criminals get away. If you do the work, you get the warrants, and they run from you, you let them go. We can't do that. Luckily, the Sheriff's Department, our pursuit policy is very, very lenient, and it's up to the current supervisor to make decisions. But I also don't agree with chasing people at 100 miles an hour for 40 miles. The longer the pursuit lasts, the more likely you are to involve somebody that's not involved, and that's the last thing we want. I would look into the training for pursuit intervention techniques. It's been something on my mind when I hear these pursuits go on and other agencies are calling them off, letting the bad guys go. I don't agree with it. There's the grappler, which safely stops pursuits. Pursuits are a big issue, and it should be a concern to everybody. We've had people killed during pursuits all over the state, all over the country, sometimes innocent bystanders just going through a red light. So I would address that. Obviously, with my time in narcotics, I was full-fledged, moving forward against all the drug dealers, the guns, everything else. I'm anti-criminal. I have been from the start, and I would do everything in my power to increase enforcement and bring down this fentanyl stuff. I mean, at least in our county, maybe meet up with some federal agencies that aren't doing their job as far as closing the border, holding people accountable. But fentanyl is huge right now. It's huge. It's a big threat to our community and everybody else's. So we need to focus on it. We focus on more on interdiction. We don't have an interdiction team right now, which I think is fairly important, doing our part to eliminate some of the things coming through. We have a main artery that runs through our county, actually a couple of them. You have child trafficking. We need to form some teams to combat child trafficking, which is super important. There's a lot of things that we do that aren't that important, that may take some funds that we need to reallocate into some more important things that really are a threat to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Long, same question. What is your plan to tackle and reduce crime?
First of all, each quarter, I'd have a meeting with the public. As you can tell, I like to eat, love to eat. We'd meet at a restaurant, and the public come and talk to me with their problems, questions. I'd reach out to church leaders in the community, and try to see exactly what we can fix, what needs to be fixed. Big issue that we have here in Michigan, Berrien County, actually the entire country, is mental health issues. For one, these people with issues, because money has been cut so much from the early 90s, there's not the right facilities or enough beds for the people to go to. Currently, there's people that have been back and forth from the jail to different forensic centers to be tested to see if they can stand trial. And there are some people that that are not able to stand trial, but there's not a bed for them to go to be placed anywhere. So they're just going back and forth. That needs to get fixed. And also, there's a really big problem with drugs, as the two people just said before me. Nowadays, it's weird when I'm in court working and hear someone is being charged with possession of crack. Usually it's fentanyl or meth. The world has changed a lot. Addiction is really ruining a lot of people's lives. We've got to work with the state, improve the laws. We need to make sure that there's money to get these people help. I can take a rough estimate right now at the jail, probably 35% of people would be better off in a mental health facility versus being at the jail. And unfortunately, when these people get out, they don't have the right support system. And what goes along with mental health care issues is substance abuse. You put those things together, and that's a shit show. Thank you.
Mr. Brand, and we are at almost the end of this, so what we're going to do is answer the same question, and then I'd like you to weave in your final pitch to the voters, and we'll go back through to a very quick one last chance for everyone. But if you would, since you're on this end, fold it all into one. What's your plan to tackle crime, and why should the people vote for you?
So I have a list on my hand card over there, the things that I want to accomplish. I want to create the Office of Constitutional Policing, so that every policy and procedure that we have in the county doesn't violate people's rights. And before I go any further, I have to address this issue with JR, because Chuck came up here and talked about it. He said he didn't do anything wrong. I read the whole case. What he did was he left the guy laying on the ground handcuffed, and he died. 3 independent autopsies said that the reason why he died is because his abdomen was crushed up into his lungs and he couldn't breathe. All they had to do was get him off the ground. We've known since 1985 that you don't handcuff people with their hands behind their back and leave them laying on the ground, because it leads to death. All right, the reason why Chuck can go up there and say that he didn't do anything wrong is because there's no policy in Berrien County against leaving people laying on the ground once they've been handicapped. I'm going to write that policy and I'm going to institute it, because no one should die while being in police custody. And we've had a lot of people dying in the sheriff's custody, in the jail and on the streets. I'm going to end that. Now, back to his question of how can we end crime in Berrien County, we need to involve the public. I plan on creating a community policing organization, and I want to reinstitute the militia in Berrien County and start training people so they can work together. We can have logistics, we can have backup, all the things that it takes if there is ever a problem in this county. Because, well, back when I was running for county commissioner, I asked them, why do we need all this military equipment? And Jim Curran, commissioner, told me, well, we're preparing for any eventuality. And I said, well, that's crazy. You can't prepare for any eventuality, but what are you doing for the rest of us? Because while the police have their weapons and the criminals have their weapons, we got nothing. We're sitting ducks in our house if something happens, and I want to change that. Thank you.
Mr. Long. Your final pitch. 30 seconds.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Your final pitch. 30 seconds.
My name is Jason Long. I love people. I want to be your sheriff. I will protect your rights, your constitutional rights. I was asked at a meet and greet that I had here a few months ago by John Parmetine, who is the Michigan State Director of Constitutional Service Peace Officers Association, would I go to jail for doing my job? And I said, hell yeah, I would go to jail. Vote for Jason Long, August 6th.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, because there were statements made, I'm giving you 60 seconds if you want a rebuttal, and then following that, the additional 30 seconds for your final pitch.
First of all, anyone wants to see the autopsy report, we can make it available, I'm sure. I'm sure it'd be released through the Sheriff's Department at any point in time. I would get a copy and I would provide it to you. I wouldn't even, I'm sure they probably wouldn't make you FOIA it. It was cleared criminally, civilly after 5 years. And when we get that mentality that gets beat into police officers that they can't do their job because they're going to be assumed that they've done wrong, we have an issue and this society falls apart. I'm out there doing the job day in and day out, and I've never backed down from a criminal. I never will. I won't back down from anybody in the name of my community and their public safety. So for him to come up with a medical conclusion, I don't know where it came from. You're not talking right now. So I'm out there, I'm protecting everybody, and I'll do what it takes to protect everybody, even though it's the weight's on my shoulders.
Would you like the additional 30 seconds for your final pitch?
So I've been out there doing this job. I've rose through the ranks. My perception as I've gotten older has grown. I've seen the things in life that make me realize having a badge doesn't give you the power, it's what you do with that badge. I've never had an ego based on the badge, but I will uphold the law, I will protect your Constitution, and I will take everything personally that affects the citizens of this county. I've been so supported throughout this campaign that I do have allegiances to people. I have allegiances to every single citizen in this county for their support, and I'm asking for your vote on August 6th. Thanks.
Thank you. Sure, yes, yeah, for a rebuttal, yes.
So Mr. Berrien talked about some of the deaths, and there has been some. But I can tell you the same thing. Everyone was done with an independent investigation, sent to the prosecutor's office. There was found no criminal charges by anyone involved. The other thing I would say is since then, we have instituted things to assist. So 3 I'm gonna bring to mind. 1, I was involved in the RFP in getting a new medical provider for the health services in the jail. We have done that. I want to thank some of the county commissioners that are here that didn't necessarily go with the lowest cost, but the best for the inmates that are there. The other thing we did was we instituted a whole body scanner that we had some people that swallowed bags of drugs, and when that gets perforated or whatever, that causes almost an instant death. So that's a tool we can use. It's not 100%, but it's a tool. It does metallic and non-metallic things. So if there are any weapons or contraband, to protect our staff and to protect them. The final is the MAT program. It's a medication-assisted treatment program that with all the fentanyl we've talked about, the overdoses, there's a 33% chance of overdose deaths from people that are coming from being incarcerated to going right back on the street. So what that program does, it adds therapy, it allows some medication to be used to help someone who does have a substance disorder. You've heard it mentioned here, it is a big issue. It's a big issue across the country, it's a big issue in our county.
Mr. Hyde, thank you.
Thank you. That's just been it. Thank you. So with that, obviously we've talked, I think the one thing that sets me apart from the other candidates is the experience that I've had in running the day-to-day operation of the sheriff's office. As we talked about the 21 years as under sheriff with the administrative duties, it is a big operation. It is an administrative operation. We talked about, you heard the just over $29 million budget. 13 million is the jail. Or 7 million is the sports services and the contracts we have that we spoke about earlier. I have the experience to do that. I will tell you, I'm very proud to have over 90% of the police chief public safety directors in the county that have endorsed me. I have the endorsement of retired Sheriff Paul Bailey and also Prosecutor Steve Perangeli before he retired. So I ask for your vote August 6th. It's a Tuesday. Thank you very much.
I want to personally thank all 4 of you for being here and answering questions. and being forthright. So thank you all very, very, very much. And by the way, everybody here should appreciate every single one of them for doing what they're doing right now. So thank you.